Good morning and welcome to Community Connections. It's Wednesday, June 4th. My name is Belle Westerfeld and I am the marketing intern for the GDC Chamber of Commerce. And we're doing things a little bit different today on Community Connections. Dawn usually takes the reins, but today is officially intern takeover day, so I'm super excited to be hosting today's show. A little brief introduction of myself since I'm new to the show. I am a rising senior at Purdue University studying user experience design, communications, and psychology. I try to keep myself as busy as possible at school with my sorority, professional development organizations, and homework, of course. I have been thoroughly enjoying working with the Chamber this summer, and I've met so many amazing people and have gone to so many great events. I'm especially excited to introduce today's guest, Doug Westerfeld with Decatur County, aka What's Up, Dad?
What's up?
All right, before we dive into Doug's role with the county, let's take a quick look at what's happening at the Chamber. First, a huge shout out to our new outstanding members. Thank you, Cornerstone Craftsman, our newest silver sponsor, as well as Heart Rhythm Safety Training, Magpies Boutique, and Copper Coyote. And now for some events. Next week, we've got a Lunch and Learn happening on Tuesday, June 10th from 12 to 1 p.m. in our conference room. Lisa Tressler, CPA and partner at RBSK, will be presenting Reset, Refocus, Rebuild, a strategic guide for businesses after tax season. Now that tax season is behind us, it's the perfect time to explore smart financial strategies, plan ahead, and set your business up for success, so next year's tax season doesn't come with the same headaches. Lunch and Learns are a great opportunity to learn, ask questions, and connect with fellow professionals. So if you're free on June 10th, we'd love to have you join us. Next, mark your calendars for June 17th as we welcome the Tree City Fall Festival Committee as our guest speakers for the next Leaders and Loggers. This event will be from 4 to 6 p.m. at the Tap. It's your chance to hear what's in store for this year's festival, ask questions, and get a behind-the-scenes look at all the planning that goes into this community favorite. A big thank you to Trish and her team at the Tap for always being fantastic hosts. Also, in case you missed it, our 40th annual golf outing is officially live. Mark your calendars for Friday, August 1st at North Branch Golf Course. Team registrations and sponsorships are now open and spots are starting to go, so make sure to register or secure a sponsorship before it's too late. This year is going to be the biggest yet, and with it being my big project of the summer, I'm making sure of it. We are super excited to announce that this year there will be a fun new way to win with our very first helicopter ball drop paired with Phase Financial. And yes, I said helicopter. You will have the chance to buy golf balls that will be then dropped out of said helicopter, and whoever's ball lands in or closest to the hole wins. Be sure to be on the lookout for marketing and information regarding this. Follow us on social media for all of the latest updates and announcements. And finally, the event everyone's buzzing about, the 2025 Women in Business Conference, is happening next Thursday, June 12th from 8:30 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. at Greensburg Elementary School. We're down to less than 15 tickets, and trust me, you don't want to miss this. This year's conference features keynote speakers, panel discussions, a networking lunch, on-site headshots, vendor booths, and real conversations designed to empower and inspire. If you've been planning to purchase a ticket or reserve a table, now's the time. Be sure to contact our office before it's too late. For more details or to register for any of these events, visit greensburgchamber.com/events or give us a call at 812-663-2832. All right, let's get to it. Doug, or Dad, welcome once again.
Thank you.
Before we dive into your role with the county, why don't you start by telling the listeners a little bit more about yourself and your background?
Sure. I got a couple questions though first before I jump into that. One, what is a rising senior?
A rising senior, since it's summer, I haven't started school yet. So I'm a rising senior. I'm about to be a senior.
This is the first time I've really ever heard that term. I didn't know if it was a Purdue thing or...
I don't want to call myself a senior yet because it makes me sad. So
okay, all right. Okay.
Prolonging
all right.
that.
Very good. And then the second thing, so we're having a helicopter drop balls out on the golf course which sounds very exciting. at the Decatur County Area Plan Office, we are responsible for, we will learn later, permits.
Yeah.
Has the chamber contacted us considering the permits necessary? I think there's a lot of things that go into that. Just asking.
That's a very good question. I would say you might have to take that one up with Dawn.
Okay. All right.
She
okay.
does more of the logistics.
All right. Very good.
That.
Okay.
But
that's all in jest, of course. So a little bit about myself. I'm born and raised here. Went to North Decatur High School. Graduated. Went to Indiana University. Majored in finance. Grew up on a farm in southeastern Decatur County. Basically lived in Decatur County my whole life, other than a few years after graduated from college. Married my high school sweetheart, Vanessa. And we have 4 kids, you being the youngest, between the ages of 30 and 20. And professionally, I've been in basically real estate. Owned title, was in the title business for 15 years, been in banking for 10 years, and then the position as the director for the area plan office became available, and it's a office and a position I always had some interest in from my years in the title business, because I worked hand in hand with those offices with real estate transactions. So that's where I'm at today.
Sounds good. So can you go ahead and explain what the Decatur County Area Plan Office is and what your main responsibilities are?
So the area plan office basically is kind of what it says it is. It plans the area for the county. So whether that's in the zoning of property, and whether they need, property owners need variances or special exceptions, because the county is set up in a certain way with zones and zoning, whether you want a business or a residence or a factory, and we've got to make sure that all that kind of coincides with each other. So that's part of what we do. And then like I said, permits, we're responsible for issuing, whether it's pond permits or building permits, electrical permits, line permits. We're responsible for addresses, and if there's address changes, when people have properties, land surveys completed, they are sent to our office for approval. And then, of course, with the building permits, when people are building property, they've got to have inspections done, and we have a building inspector that goes out and does those inspections to make sure that those properties are being built to code.
I see. So you talked about zoning and rezoning. So what does that involve, and maybe give an example of how that's handled? Yeah,
so everything in the county is in a zone. There's agricultural zones, there's residential zones, there's business zones, there's industrial zones. So everybody's technically already within a zone. So what rezoning does is, if I have, for example, where we live, that was a cornfield, and it was zoned A1 for agriculture. This is the typical rezoning that we see. Before we could build the house that we live in and you have grown up in, we had to have that property rezoned from an A1 to A2 in order for us to build a residence there. So that would be a perfect example. Or if somebody is wanting to, like when Honda come. Honda presently, that was a cornfield, so it was zoned agriculture. So when Honda come to Decatur County, all that property had to be rezoned to an industrial zoning. So those are a couple examples of how that works. And then you have come into play with zoning is, variances. So each zone has certain rules, and if a property owner wants to say they want to build a building closer to the property line than what the zoning allows, then they have to get a variance. Or say a property owner lives in their house, and they want to run this small little business out of the house, then they may require to get a special exception because the property is zoned as a residence. But if they're going to run their little accounting firm or something like that, they've got to get a special exception for that.
So you mentioned all of the different types of zones. What are all of those? Because you mentioned agriculture, industry, residence. Are there any other ones?
So it's agriculture, business, residence, and industrial. And then within those zones are kind of there's light industrial, there's heavy industrial, or there's residential. There's like we'll just use R2 for example, where a single family dwelling can be built. But then there's also R4, which is residential, but a multifamily, which is like an apartment, can be built in an R4. So those are the 4 zonings, and then within each one of those zonings, and there's I just call like a subzoning, depending on what is going to go in. So like industrial, there's heavy industrial and light industrial. So like a little tool and die shop is going to be more of a light industrial, or heavy industrial is going to be more like a Honda factory.
Yeah. Okay. So each of these different zones have just specific
their own
guidelines.
Own criteria. Mm-hmm.
Makes sense. So what types of permits does your office issue?
What types of permits?
Yeah.
So building permits, pond permits, pole barns is there's a lot of people building pole barns, so that's considered an accessory building. So you have to get a permit for that. Sign permits, if you want to have a sign put on your property, you have to get a permit to have a sign put on your property. So that in a nutshell. Electrical permit, but the big one is building permit. When somebody's building a house, that's the majority of the permits that we issue, as well as for pole barns. See a lot of pole barns go up.
What is that process like to get a permit?
You've got to provide us with certain documentation. So it depends on the permit. So say we'll just stick with building a house. So if someone wants to build a home and they want to get a building permit, they've got to get a certain documentation. That would be a copy of the deed of the property that they live on, the property card from the assessor's office. We have to make sure that septic can go on the property. They have to give us a driveway approval from the county highway department. And then the biggest thing is the plans and specs. So we have a building inspector who does a fabulous job in our office, as well as the other ladies. But he wants to review those plans to make sure that the property is being built to code, plus so that when he goes out there as it's being built, they're following the plans that were proposed or presented to him at the time that the permit is being requested. So once those have been reviewed, those plans have been reviewed and approved by our building inspector, then at that point, then we will issue a building permit. And then also at that time is when we will issue an address for the property. So that all comes through our office as well. The address, whether it's an address change or it's a new address, those are issued out of our office as well. So that kind of gives you an idea of how the permit process works, especially for building a home, and that's a majority of what we see.
Yeah. So you talked about the building inspection process. Does that only happen when you're going through the permit process, or are there other scenarios to where you're inspecting buildings?
Well, no, it's just while they're being built, to make sure they're being built to code. So, and each type of permit has certain parameters that the inspector has to go by, as far as how often they go out there. Whether is a footer inspection at first, and then it's the rough-in inspection at a certain point, and then you get to the point where it's a final inspection, and that's basically where, okay, you've built this house to the plans that you presented. It is all built to code. We do a final inspection. At that point, our office either issues a certificate of occupancy. If they're going to, if it's a residence, you're going to issue a certificate of occupancy, or if it's just like a whole building, it'd be a certificate of completion. So, which that certificate of occupancy is critical, because if the individuals building the house are getting a loan or want to get a loan to pay, a mortgage, the lender will require a certificate of occupancy before they'll loan them the money to make sure that it's occupable.
I see. So you also talked about assigning addresses earlier.
Mm-hmm.
How do you go about assigning these addresses in the county, and why is this important?
So two things. Assigning it is basically software. It's a software that I have, and it basically locates the property depending on, where I put the cursor, basically. So it's all a numbering system. And so that's how I assign them. It's through the software. And so I take a look at the other addresses around it, make sure it makes sense, and then I assign them that number. So, everything, your roads are already predetermined. It's the number. So the critical part of assigning the correct number and making sure it all aligns is 911. So if somebody calls 911 for an emergency, we got to make sure that the addresses that we're giving out to the community make sense with the 911 software. So if somebody has an emergency, that the fire and the ambulance or the police can all get to there, so that they know that that's the correct spot to go to. And I think that's one of the things that people don't really think about, and it's something that we coordinate with the 911 department to make sure that they'll send me an email, say, hey, this address doesn't look correct, can you look into it? And then we'll look at whether we need to be changed, or maybe it is correct and it's incorrect in a different system. But that's the most critical part about the addresses, is to make sure that the emergency departments within the county and even outside the county, as far as that's concerned, can get to that property if there's an emergency.
Gotcha. So can you tell us about the Decatur County Revitalization Project and what it aims to accomplish?
So last year, before I became the director, there was some funds that was assigned to our department to be able to I don't make sure I use the right words, to be able to rehabilitate or clean up properties that have, the word that we use is blight. It's blighted properties. So the committee, they decided to call it the Decatur County Revitalization Project, so that we could take those funds on properties that have, there's certain ordinances within the county that you have to keep your property up to a certain, whether it's trash in the yard or vehicles just sitting around that aren't, that don't have whether a license or registration, or sitting out in the roads, and this allows us to go and clean those properties up. So it's I know it's kind of been in the news with some of our commissioners meetings, and so it's a critical project to make sure that we can keep the properties, because property values can be determined on your neighborhood, right? So we want to make sure that properties are staying cleaned according to the ordinances that are in the county, and these funds and this project allows us to do that for the county. So
makes sense. So when I was at the commissioners meeting, is that what that was?
That's what that was. Yep,
well,
absolutely.
Now I understand. So could you explain the comprehensive plan now?
So communities do a comprehensive plan, or they should, counties and cities and towns. And so in 2017 was the last time that Decatur County did a comprehensive plan, and before I came on board, it was determined that we needed to take a look at our comprehensive plan. So the comprehensive plan is basically, this is our plan for our community. This is what we want our community, our county, to look like in the future, whether it's industrial or agriculture, businesses. This is how we see our county in the future. So every so many years, you need to take a step back and take a look of what we were thinking in this case 2017, and see what has changed, and put those into a new comprehensive plan. So we've just started the process with the comprehensive plan. There are surveys that have gone out. If you've on the county's website, county's Facebook page. But we would like for the community to get involved and fill out the surveys. You can do them. Go online. It's www.surveymonkey.com/r/Decatur Comp, and that's Decatur, and then COMP. and fill out those surveys. And then at that point, the surveys are going to be active. You're going to be able to do that for several more weeks. And then coming up, we are next week, there's a scoring committee that is going to be looking at engineer proposals for the comp plan, and we're going to be the committee is going to be looking through those to determine which engineering firm we want to help with the comprehensive plan. And then once that occurs, then we'll start with the public engagement, and that's where we'll get the public involved. We'll ask some members of the community to be part of committees, and the goal is to have the comprehensive plan completed by November of next year. That's the plan. We're in the process of trying to get a grant through Southeastern Indiana Regional Plan Commission to pay for a majority of the cost of the comprehensive plan. So that's kind of part of why we're doing the surveys right now and following this criteria of doing the scoring committee and getting those proposals accepted, because here in about 4 weeks is we'll really start getting the ball rolling with the plan, with the public engagement, some public hearings, and really kind of set the groundwork for what we want Decatur County to look like in the future.
Yeah. So you're talking about this survey, and what's a good motivator for people to go out and actually fill it out?
Well, if they're a part of this community and they have an idea of what they want this community to look like, this is their opportunity to do that. This is one of the steps in their opportunity by filling out the survey, because it's a huge benefit for whoever ends up, whatever, even if you don't want to be part of a committee, at least do the survey so you have a say into how you feel like you want the county to look like in the future. So that's the critical part. And then the committees that are formed, they're going to take that information and and that data, and we're going to compile it and come to a decision. When we complete this comprehensive plan, this is what we view Decatur County looking like in the next 7 to 10 years.
Makes sense. So, do you have any upcoming events that the public should know about?
Yeah, tonight we have our Board of Zoning Appeals meeting and the Area Plan Commission meeting. That is tonight. The Area Plan Commission is meeting first. That's where they do the rezoning. So I think we got 5 petitions. That's at the high school. It's at the Greensburg Auditorium at 6:30, and then once it is completed, then we will have the Board of Zoning Appeals, and there's 1 petition on the docket for that, and so that is set to begin at 7 p.m. That's the time that's been advertised. So we've got 5 petitions for the Area Plan Commission, so that might run a little bit longer than a half an hour, but by as far as legal notice, the Board of Zoning Appeals meeting is at 7 p.m. tonight at the Greensburg High School, and enter through door 1, S as in Sam.
All right. Sounds like there's a lot of good stuff coming up. But to end this episode, I have a few fun questions that I pulled out of my sleeve. So, what is your favorite part about your job?
I like working with the public, but I love maps. I just had this thing.
You do love maps.
I just had this thing about maps, and it's just I always, there was a time where I thought if I could get a job where maps were a critical part of my job, and I've got it. It's so, yeah, I love maps, and I love looking at properties with maps and figuring out what's the best use, and yeah, I like maps.
Yeah, you do. I actually have a funny story regarding that. One time I was on my way back from school and my phone died, and there were a lot of roads closed, and I just couldn't get back the way that I normally do. And I call my dad, my phone's at maybe 5%, and he writes out for me exactly how to get back home. Yep. And my brain just doesn't work like that. So basically I had to turn around and go back to school because it just wasn't working out for me. But that definitely attests to your love of maps.
Yep.
Also, what did you want to be when you grew up? When you were younger?
An architect.
Okay. So how
That's
does that
for all
compare?
those people that watch Seinfeld.
Okay. I don't watch Seinfeld, so
So
I wouldn't know.
I wanted to be an architect,
Okay.
just like George Costanza.
Okay. If you had to switch jobs with anyone in the city or the county for a day, who would it be and why?
Just for a day?
Just for a day.
Just for a day?
Yeah.
I would, if it's just for a day, I would like to be the mayor for a day and just see the next day how he's going to fix everything that I screwed up that day.
That's a good answer. And the last burning question that I know everybody is wondering, who is your favorite kid?
That's not fair. But I do not have a favorite. I treat all my children the same.
Okay.
Does that sound good?
Yeah, that's fine.
You accept that?
I accept that.
Okay.
I kind of expected that would be the answer. All right. Well, that's all the questions that I have for you. If you have any final comments.
If you have any questions, we have a lot of stuff going on. Our county is situated in a location that makes it very desirable for a lot of things, whether it's agriculture or business. Being on I-74 halfway in between Cincinnati and Indianapolis. So if you've got any questions, feel free to, my number is 222-0554. That's direct line to my phone. You got questions, feel free to call me. I'm open to discuss whether it's, within certain parameters, projects. There's some you can't discuss until they get to a certain point, but I know a lot of people have a lot of questions about our county, and I'm open to discuss, like I said, to a certain extent based on the parameters that are available to me to discuss. So.
All right, sounds good. That brings us to the end of today's episode of Community Connections. A huge thank you to my guest and my dad, Doug Westerfeld, for giving us such an insightful look into the work of the Decatur County Area Plan Office. I think we all learned just how much happens behind the scenes to keep our community growing, safe, and well-planned. And most importantly, I finally understand what my dad does for work. So if you missed any part of today's episode, you can check out our YouTube channel, or if you want to revisit some of the events that I mentioned previously, be sure to check out our website, greensburgchamber.com, and of course follow the Greensburg-Decatur County Chamber of Commerce on social media for any future updates. Thank you so much for tuning in to Intern Takeover Day. This has been such a fun experience hosting Community Connections. I'm Belle Westerfeld signing off, and we'll see you next time.